gentlemen, welcome to the town of Wheatfield for the board meeting for May 16th. This evening we do have a preliminary hearing. This is a public hearing on a local law to amend town code, basically setting a moratorium in motion regarding solar farms and land-mounted solar systems. We do have Drew Riley here this evening. He's going to carry us through this for the evening. And anybody and everybody who wants to speak on the subject will be welcome to speak. We do ask, if you do speak on the subject, that you try and hold it to 3 minutes. And please come to the microphone so that we can hear you. Drew?
Thank you. Good evening, Supervisor, Honorable Town Board, and residents. We're here to talk about a moratorium on solar installations. And the first question I always get is, well, are we anti-solar? Why are we doing this? No, we're not anti-solar. Matter of fact, we've had a few people request whether it would be allowed in the town. And if you look at the town's existing zoning ordinance, whether it be for the agricultural district or the rural residential district, it's specifically not called out for in the code. So right now, the anticipation would be that it would not be allowed in the town. We would like to write a law that would consider all forms of solar. The moratorium is on what we call ground-mounted systems, if somebody wanted to put them in their backyard, or solar farms, which are the large arrays that are put in place to sell power to the grid. We do not have a moratorium or suggesting a moratorium on solar panels being installed on people's roofs. You can still approach the building department if you want to put solar panels on your roof or on your business, and you can get a permit to do such, correct? All right. What we have is the backyard units. Someone wants to put up a solar array panels in their backyard on the ground. We want to look at that because there's been problems in other communities making sure they're located in the correct place. And then, of course, we also had people coming from out of town asking to maybe rent property or lease property to put large solar arrays. Again, right now, they're not specifically allowed in the ordinance, so they came in to try to get a permit or go before the planning board. They were being told that it's not allowed in the law. So we have an energy committee formed, a focus group that's going to work on this law. We want at least a few months to put that law together. We already have some good drafts from surrounding communities. Other communities in Western New York are dealing with the same issue. Rockport, Hamburg, there's dozens of communities that are working on this. We've gotten draft laws from them. So I think we'll do a very good job at putting a law that's specific to the town of Wheatfield and the issues in the town of Wheatfield. So tonight we're asking for a 6-month moratorium.
Just as I asked other people before, can you talk to the microphone because our listening system for the podcast can't hear when we're not speaking into the microphone.
Okay.
If you want to stand to the side, that's fine, whatever you can do.
Sure. I just wanted to make sure I didn't have my back to the residents. So, again, we're proposing a solar installation for ground-mounted and solar arrays for a 6-month moratorium, so we have a time to work on that law and present a law. Right now, we would allow probably all 3 type units, again, but that has to go through the local law adoption once one is put together, but we want a good law in place to regulate those installations. So again, we're here for public hearing to get any questions or comments on what we're doing, and also to announce that there is a committee, and if you have comments or concerns, please forward those through the town to that committee as they write this law and put it in place. Hopefully that'll be done in the next couple months, and we'll be back here again to be able to remove the moratorium as we adopt the new law.
Yeah, basically we did a standalone last year. There was came in and put a standalone unit in the backyard in a residential area. That brought up a lot of questions. And then this year, this spring, there's been all kinds of talk of large corporations moving into town, taking over farmland, farmers selling to or leasing to these large companies for very large units. We went to the law and we found exactly 3 lines of code and absolutely no control over that.
I thought it was interesting. I made a joke. It was an interesting comment I received. Someone called me up and said, well, it's a solar farm. It's allowed in an agricultural area. And I said it has nothing to do with farming. Yeah. Now, if there are farmers in the room, if you put solar panels on your farm to specifically use it for powering your farm, that falls under Ag and Markets law, and that's allowed. But we're talking about an installation where you're selling power to the grid. It's not a farm. It's not an agricultural activity.
So rather than say no, rather than say yes, we felt the best thing to do was to take a look at it. I challenged Rich Muscatello, and we created an energy group who would take a look at this. But to get there, between now and then, we wanted to have this moratorium to slow anything down that's going on out there until we have the right law in place for Wheatfield. Anybody in this room or anybody out there who is a resident that wants to be part of the process, we'd love to have you as part of the process. Rich Muscatello has right on the website a way of applying to become a member of one of these groups, and we'd love to have you. So, that being said, does anybody have any questions for Drew? Does anybody have any comments to make? Anybody on the board?
You said there's 3 sites. There's a solar farm.
And then there's backyard installation, ground mounted.
Okay.
And then there's rooftop units.
Okay, but the rooftop ones aren't already covered by the law?
Right, we don't have a moratorium on rooftop
okay.
units, it's only on the ground mounted and the solar farms. You can still go to the building department and apply if you wanna put solar panels on your roof.
Okay, because I thought we already had the roof one.
Right, and that falls under the New York State Building Code, you can deal with that.
Okay.
Yeah, regardless of what happens with our law, every installation is required to follow New York State and federal electrical code. That's sort of understood, and that's one of the reasons for permitting. It's also one of the reasons that we might want to adjust our permit fees, because it will require Mike or somebody in his department to go back 1, 2, 3 times. On a larger unit, it could be several trips. You may have to hire somebody to do that. And that would all be part of the law. Again, I'll go back to the board members. Anything?
Bob, I have a comment. I'm a member of the agricultural group, and there's several members here. With that being said, I hate to use the word all, but I think I could safely say all the farmers have their tractors, have their combines, they have their land. They want to have the ability to sell their land upon retirement if they don't have a son, daughter, or someone to take over their farm. They want to have that option. So I certainly think we can put our regulations that we feel are just and right, but we have to allow the farmers to have solar panels, because this is their land. They've had their land for years. I believe it's their right. Now, that's coming from a member of the agricultural focus group. Now, as a member of a council, I'll say if we had a solar farm, okay, I think it's better than a subdivision, because a solar farm is not going to call you and say, I need my road milled and paved. I need a lift station like we're going through now, replaced. I need, what else do subdivisions all call, they need many things, where a solar farm, if a farmer has his right, that is his right to make income or to develop his land the way he wishes.
And I can't speak for the law, but every proposed law that we've submitted to the committee has solar farms being allowed in an agricultural district. There's another means of using your property. Now, there will be requirements for such, and that's what we've run into in other communities. You've read in the paper, they've been all over the place, whether it's been Batavia, whether it's been the town of Porter. You've seen these proposals for large solar farms, and I think the issues have arisen that you have to put a law in place. So you've seen also the backlash in Batavia when they proposed them. It was the backlash of using up good agricultural soils, and couldn't we put them on the lesser important agricultural soils. So those are the things that we need to consider. But I don't think, and I can't speak for the focus group, but I don't think any law, proposed in the town will probably restrict them totally from agricultural land, because it is probably a good accessory use, or a good use for a future use for a farmland. As you said very eloquently, doesn't require roads, doesn't require water, doesn't require sewer. So in that respect, it's a great use for an agricultural piece of property.
Right, town of Lewiston's looking for $4 million to replace water lines, I read in the paper. It's just, those days are coming here too.
Yep.
But I just don't want to, and I am a farmer. I mean, there's a lot of things that are coming into, I'm not a farmer, I own property, let's put it that way. They're looking at the reflection of the runway. They're looking how close you are to the grid. Those all weigh in. So and they're not talking about putting foundations in. That's what I was hearing from, my sister and I own a farm. They're talking about driving piles and mounting them on that, not removing any topsoil. So, yes, 20 years from now, most of the people in this room may not be around, but they could farm that area again.
And the town of Wheatfield would love to hear this, because we know we have drainage issues in the town, that how the state law is written, because of the way solar panels are installed, these type of farms, the water runs off and then into the ground, so you don't have that impervious surface. They actually consider it that it's not impervious surface, because it comes down, hits the panels, and rolls onto the ground that's still underneath, so it's not like it's running off the property.
Maybe I can ask this one, Drew. Do you know the tax ramifications if you have a solar farm?
I do not know. They are individual. The ones that I've been involved with talk about pilots and other payments to the town. That is New York State tax law. If your assessor's here, I would
She's not.
give that as an assignment to him or her to research that issue on all the different programs out there for solar farms. Zoning law won't address assessment issues. Cannot do that, but your town assessor needs to address that issue.
Would you have to put a fence, a perimeter fence around a solar farm?
Some of the towns have considered that. The solar people will tell you that's kind of difficult for them to put fence around a 20-acre or 30-acre or 50 acres of solar panels. That's something you'll consider in your law. Some of the other issues are how far they have to be set back from residential. I know when they proposed them in other communities, the people came out and said it was really an industrial use of land, and they didn't want to be staring it out of their front windows, so there was some setback requirements in some of the laws.
I didn't know if there was an electrical hazard. I know Niagara Mohawk, when they have like a power grid, they
They
have a
typically
perimeter
do
fence.
not see fencing all around them. The ones
Okay.
I've seen, the installations are all over. We do not see, especially for the large arrays, you can imagine the amount of fencing that would have to
Oh,
be
yeah.
put in place.
Now, if somebody wanted a solar farm today in Wheatfield in the RR zone, it's simply not available, even by special permit, because it's not even allowed under special permit, right?
Your code, just to let you know, and it's a very important part of your code, if it's not specifically listed as an allowed use, it's presumed not to be an allowed use. So you can't just make an interpretation and say, well, it's kind of like this. It has to be listed as an allowed use. It's not listed anywhere in the code.
How about under AR zone?
I believe there's nothing under the AR zone either for
It would
solar
be-
farms. They have a pretty modern code to discuss solar farms or whatever. Panels sometimes are mentioned in the code, but that's typically allowed on the rooftop. So we're talking about backyards and
So
large solar
if somebody
farms.
applied to Mike for a building permit today, if we do not do the moratorium,
Right.
he cannot say yes.
He cannot say yes. Now, have we done anything with, like, say I'm a residential property owner, own 5 acres of land, I want to put a small array out back. Right now, they could apply to you for that. You would treat it like a garage or something like that. Where it becomes a problem is, say you have a 5-acre lot and you want to put up 5,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet, then it becomes outside the realm of an accessory use. And also the power has to be used on the site, because then it's accessory to the structure. If you're putting in a array of panels and you're selling it to the grid, which they're all connected to the grid, but that's the pure purpose of it, then it's kind of a little different.
I see a question in the back.
The biggest issue has been the aesthetics. People say, I'm living out in a rural area, and all of a sudden the farm field across the street or the empty field across the street turns into a solar array of 20, 30, 40, 50 acres of land. The people, I mean, the meetings I've had, the people say it's an industrial use of the land. Why are we putting this equipment all over this piece of property that I have to look at? You know, it's the exact opposite. They say, well, I'd rather look at a couple houses than look at 40 acres of solar panels. So that's been the concern I've seen. The other ones are reflective, which I find if they're well-installed solar panels, they shouldn't be reflected, but we've had problems with reflection, people complaining that it shines into their houses. We've had the other complaints of taking away good farm property. We've had complaints of, you know, hurting animals and stuff that use the property. But those are the standard complaints you hear. But the biggest one is aesthetics, that it changes the whole atmosphere of the area. Right. Yep. The ones I've seen in this. Right. It's aesthetics. People think it's not something that's typically allowed. Why would you allow this? I don't want to look at these type of structures across the street from me. It makes it look industrialized. That's the quote I got from a whole bunch of meetings where people call it the industrialization of land. Yep. Yeah. Well, we regulate that now. We have rules and regulations about all accessory structures, how far they have to be off the property line, et cetera. The ones that I've seen that have gone into place where they're regulating the ones in the backyard, smaller units in the backyard that people want to put up for their own use. Typically, they're allowed. They have some issues like how far they have to be set back from the property line, because we had a problem in one of the communities that they put it right up to the property line. The neighbor didn't like it, so they went to the ZBA and put up a 10-foot fence and some bushes which blocked the solar panels, and they got into a neighbor battle over, and one of the big issues is sky rights and whatever, and whether the law will address that you have to have rights that you're not blocking that solar panel. Think about it, you spend all the money on the solar panel, and your neighbor builds something to block the solar going to that. That's a difficult part of the law, right? Tonawanda has sky rights in their laws, basically guaranteeing sky rights.
Through the gentleman in the back. Can you come to the mic, possibly?
Okay, now you're talking about the setback rules.
Right.
Because my neighbor is the one that put a solar panel up, and I put the fence up.
Yep.
Well, now,
There's a difference between you're talking about.
oh, I know, but my problem here is, he's gonna try and dictate where I can put in, if I wanna put something up like a pole barn or that. Now, he's trying to dictate what I do with my own property. I'm going by the town rules, by their setback laws, and he's threatening a lawsuit over it. Well, I'm going by the town rules. It's not my problem that his setback rules are farther back on a solar structure compared to the town rules.
And these are great comments you need to get to that committee who's working on the law. Like I said, tonight is just about putting a moratorium. No more of these ground-mounted or solar farms till we have the rules in place. But I would get your comments. You've had direct experience with it. I would definitely get your comments to that committee. Richard's here and whatever, he can get your number, because we need input from people who've actually experienced this. You know, most of us have not experienced having solar panels, and some of us say, hey, it'd be a great idea to experience a problem. We just want to make sure we write rules that address those potential problems.
I do think that one of the 3 lines that the code has says you cannot obstruct your neighbor's solar panels, the sun to your solar panels. So that actually, I think, is in the code.
For 3 hours a day.
Yeah, it wasn't anticipating the situation where you have standalones, I'm sure.
So that's something that will need to be addressed better, and we'll work with the building department too to make sure that section of the law for those, residential ones in people's backyards, that they address those issues better.
Drew, will these be fixed units? Will they be adjustable as, the winter sun versus the summer sun, and when, so these things will move as the sun goes across the sky, or are they gonna be
What I've seen so
are they
far
stationary?
is the fixed units, but I'm sure there are units out there that move with the sun. Right now, the cost difference, and again, I'm outside of what the industry tells me is it's too expensive to have those units that track the sun. They're basically fixed units, and they have a fixed where they get the maximized amount. And again, people who are experts on them, there could be, but right now the ones I've seen are fixed units, all fixed units. It costs too much money for them to track the sun.
Are you gonna be covering both of those units in the new law?
They'll probably address that.
Okay.
I mean, it's something, again, if you want to address that they're moving units, because once you have moving parts, you have chances for failures and problems and other things to occur.
Especially with ice.
Yep.
Anybody else? Anybody from the floor? Any member? Okay, if there is nothing else, then I will go ahead and I will close this hearing.